I am so happy and excited that you all are here. I have my friend Makenzie here with us today.
Yeah.
I wanted you to just come on and just have a conversation with all of us about some things going on in your life. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Makenzie. I don't know, I'm a paralegal. That's what I do as a living. Yeah, for a living. I'm 26 and single and just living life. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, so we were just talking sort of about how we're both, I've just entered a waiting season and you've kind of been in one for a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of wanted to walk with you through and just anything that you feel like, you've learned in that season, especially for someone who is walking into it, because I think you've just been so helpful for me.
Yeah.
Having like, okay, hey, I've been in this for a while and I know it sucks, but for someone who's walking into it, how do you think that you could like best prepare yourself?
Yeah, I think something I've learned in my waiting season, which there have been like times kind of ebbed and flowed through a waiting season, is there's a good way to wait and then there's a bad way to wait. And we were kind of talking about it just a few minutes ago. But yeah, there's a way to wait where it's an active waiting. It's not a passive waiting, and then it's not I'm going to try to force this to like get out of this waiting season, or I'm going to try to make something happen. And so I have done all of the above. Like I've passively waited where it's like, well, God's just going to have to show me, what he can do. Like I'm just going to sit here, I'm going to be stubborn, and he's going to have to show out. And I've not, taken opportunities that I feel like maybe God put in front of me, or an open door. So that's kind of what I would call like a passive waiting. And then, there's the trying to force something. I've done that so many times where I'm like, I hate this season. I hate waiting. I hate everything that it encompasses. And I want to try to get out of it. And I want to force something that doesn't need to be forced, and that doesn't even reach what like God's best is for me.
Right.
And just trying to make it happen. And then there's a where I'm moving forward in what God has for me, despite the things that I'm still waiting on. Right. And if those things come, great. And if they don't, great. But it's a trusting and it's a loving God in the midst of the waiting. Yeah, I've just learned how to actively wait, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I definitely had such a hard time with, after going through a breakup, of trying to fill those voids so fast, because I thought I was like, oh, I'm waiting, like, okay, God, what's next? But it really was like I was saying that as a verbal, like, hey, God, I'm going to like let you know, I know you're there, but then I'm also going to try to find every last possible thing that I can do to fill it.
Right.
And so I was kind of forcing okay, what's next? And I had a hard time finding that balance.
Yeah.
You have to be in the middle to some degree. And it's so hard because...
Oh, yeah, the middle sucks. Yeah, it's awful. Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
And I would find myself so frustrated. Like if I was just sitting there waiting, like genuinely waiting, like, okay, God, show up, come to my doorstep, I would get mad. Because it's like, well, nothing's coming.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, what's next? Who else can I talk to? Who's going to be my next boyfriend? Who am I going to marry? And I put so much pressure on myself. And so that was just something else I wanted to ask you is, has there been any times where you found yourself feeling like you're putting too much pressure on yourself to accomplish finding those things that put you into that next season?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think it's still like, that's a lie from the enemy, right? Like, just like anything else, like that pressure is a lie. Sometimes we can be really aware of the lie and we can combat it with truth. Right. Or sometimes we're not aware of the lie and we let it fester and we let it affect us. Absolutely. I felt pressure where it's like, whether the pressure be, well, I need to change. I need to like lose 10 pounds. I need to like be prettier, or like whatever it might be, to get that next step of what I'm wanting. And those are all lies from the enemy. Or, it goes back to like forcing. And I think that's what will lead to trying to force something to get out of the season is that pressure, because pressure makes you want to act. We're actually pressure, like when you think of like gold, how gold's made, it's like under pressure, it's pressured, right? And so like pressure isn't bad, it's not awful, but like when you let it affect you in a negative way and lead into lies, I think is where you can get in trouble a little bit.
I definitely feel like the waiting for me was just such a roller coaster, and just going up and down with it every day. It was sometimes, and you've said this before, it was, and maybe it was even Rebecca, it was like a moment by moment and second by second of, you know, it's not just okay, you know, maybe next week it'll be really bad and then the next week will be good. It's like a constant. And I think too, something I had to guard myself is, and especially even now, I have to stop myself from being jealous. Because I look at other people and I'm like, how did you get it? How do you have it? Why don't I? And you know, I've just kind of had to lay that at Jesus' feet to be like, okay, you know, I'm happy for them, and I want what's best for them, and I'm glad they're not going through it, but I would find myself just jealous. I mean, of people who've been married for like 50 years, really?
No, I mean, we're talking about waiting, so like, I would love to be married, right? Like, I mean, we're just gonna like put it out there, like, I would love to be married, and I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I'm ready for that next step, and I'm just waiting to meet my spouse. All of my friends are married. Almost every single one of them. You are one of my only single friends. Like, love it. No, it's so hard sometimes where I'm like, dang it, like, what the heck? Like, I have, which you know them, it's a couple at church. They got married at 19. I love that is like God's path for your life, and I think it's so beautiful that everyone has a different story, right? Like, it's so awesome, and like, my story is just as powerful as, you know, somebody that got married at 19. There has been, like, I've had to have distinct moments where I'm like, you will not be jealous. Like, you will not be jealous of that, because that is their story and their relationship, and God is writing something just as beautiful for me. Just looks a little bit different. But I have to fight jealousy all the time.
I mean, it's hard. And I think as I've experienced and grown in this lovely past few months of mine, I have realized how important it is to position myself just around other people who are in similar situations that are not constantly talking about how miserable they are. Because I like that you and I can have this conversation, and it's relatable, and it's open, and it's honest, but it's not like, you know, woe is me, look at me.
I love my life. I mean, in the midst of the waiting, like, does it suck, and are there hard days? 100%. But I love my life. Like, I'm so blessed. Like, God has, like, knocked my socks off this past year. And, like, in terms of, like, opening doors for me and blessing me. But, absolutely. Surrounding yourself with that is important.
And I think, too, like, it's... all of this kind of just goes right into not just waiting for a relationship, you know, even if you are happily in a relationship and you've been married for, you know, lots of years, it's still so important to realize that you're always in that waiting season, you know, like there's always going to be something next, or, you know, you might have a season where you feel like you've got it all put together, and then you're like, okay, well, what's next? What's the next job? What's the next thing? And so I think all of this kind of can play all together. It's not, you know, right now our season waiting is mostly relational and kind of waiting like, okay, hey, where are ya? I'm here, I'm waiting. So, what are some things that you feel like you have been able to do to fight loneliness? Because I think waiting can be so lonely, and I know we've kind of talked about putting yourself around other people, but you know, there are moments where when you are sitting there just waiting, and maybe it is a relationship that left, like, what do, you know, to fill that time?
I have learned the art of two things this past year, because I've learned a lot this past year. It's been a big growing year for me. One, letting people in to like what you're going through or what you're feeling. I have two best friends, but they live out of state. They live long distance, and so they're with their husbands, and they have like their lives, and like we're very close, and I love them dearly, but they're not here. And so I had to find community here, and then go beyond that, and then let them in, be vulnerable. And so I have, you know, two friends here that I hang out with regularly, and like they know my vulnerability, and like they know my loneliness. They know when I'm having a hard time. So like one, just like letting people in, and that can be really hard, especially to like if we're talking about waiting and singleness, like to married couples, that's really hard to like be like, actually I'm super lonely today, like it's just today really sucks because I feel so lonely, but like letting them in on that and letting them love you in the way that they know how. Like I felt so loved by the people in my life this past year just because I opened the door and I let them in. I was vulnerable with them, and it's been so special. Also, I have found the art of having a hobby. So I started I started crocheting this year. Love that. And it really like
Did you just make a beanie?
Oh yeah, okay, I've made beanies, I've made blankets, I've made I've made so much. But I like that has really helped, and it's like been something that I didn't expect, like just to put just to use my brain in a different way. And so like I would anybody that is dealing with or struggling with loneliness, like hobbies are great. Like and starting a hobby with a friend, like I have a friend that we started crocheting together. And so like we learned together and like that was really fun. The power of a hobby is something that I have learned this year, and it's a good one. Yeah, crocheting, it's really fun. You can just learn on the internet. It's so fun.
That's actually how this was all birthed, was I kind of had that desire for a long time just to do something on social media, and whenever I, had gone through my breakup, I'm like, okay, I really need to go hard on this idea, because it had been coming up because the breakup was not, here we go.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of a build-up, and in that build-up was like, hey, I really want to do this. And so when it was over, it's like, okay, I need to pour all of my time into something that is bigger than myself or that I'm excited about, because honestly it's made me look at all of my decisions walking into this season so differently, because it's like, okay, I have something to do, or I have something to work on whenever I have that moment of just, hey, I'm really lonely. The loneliness for me in my season of waiting has been the hardest. And, you can find yourself lonely if you are in between jobs or like, okay, like I feel like I'm the only one here. And so I definitely think that those are two really good things. And, and I think I've learned too, people are more caring most of the time than you think. Like when you get, I feel like I'm always like, okay, I can't really let people in that much. I can't be like, hey, I'm struggling with this right now, or are you free? Like I need somebody, because I don't want to like be a burden, which I feel like so many people are that way, and I've just sort of learned that if you can find those people, they don't care to be there for you.
Yeah, not at all.
As long as you're moving forward and trying to push yourself to be better. So
well, it's a godly relationship, right? Like it's acknowledging where you're at, but not letting you stay there. Right. And so I have friends that they're like, yeah, Makenzie, it really does suck this season you're in. Like it's hard, but also like you have a lot of good things, and I do have so many good things. And so people care way more than what you think. I mean, like the friendships that I have built deeper or grown deeper in this past year, we've been friends for years, but this year it's been like, no, like we've formed a friendship, like we let each other in now, and it's been so awesome and beautiful and like very sweet, and I would not be where I am today without them. 100%.
For sure. I think community is so underrated for its impact, and it can be a good community or bad, and you have to be so intentional with where you position yourself, because it can kind of dictate your future. Like my grandma's always said, like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And it's so true, because especially when you are just in that season of waiting and you're vulnerable. The reality of it is you're vulnerable because you have so much going on and you have so many different options that it's like, okay, what's around you. And so that is so good, just to have those people that you can know that you can rely on, that aren't going to give you bad advice.
And they have a perspective that you don't. And so and that's always so important, because like we can get in our head, we can get in our feelings, and and to have people that just have a perspective that you don't have is so valuable, beyond words.
The next question that I have for you is just sort of, what would you say is the best thing to do to help rely on God, more? I know we've kind of talked about talking to others, but how do we shift it to growing closer to God and relying on Him in those moments?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, we were talking before this, and I was telling you a story that happened to me recently, and I was really frustrated and mad at, like, the way that this situation went. And I, like, got in my car, and I just, like, I let God know how I was feeling.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was not a quiet conversation. There were tears, there was yelling, there was frustration, there was anger, there was sadness, there was, like, all of it. And I laid it out in front of the Lord, and I let Him know. And I think sometimes we try to not twist God's leg, but, like, be like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm ready for whatever you want to give me, God. Like, I'm just gonna almost, like, fake it till I make it.
Yeah.
Where, like, God is, like, so much more interested in growing you as a person than just giving you whatever you want. I think just being real with God in a season of waiting is always so important. And and I learned that in college too. I went through a breakup in college, and I was like, I really learned how to be real with God, to, like, let Him know, like, no, actually, I'm really sad right now, or, like, I'm really mad right now, and that's how, like, I mean, you don't hide your emotions from, people in your life, and so, like, don't hide them from God. Just be so real with Him, and, like, and He can take it. If anybody can take our anger, it's God. Like, He absolutely can take it. Just being real with Him and, like, letting Him in, just like you let other people in, but letting God in and being vulnerable with God and allowing Him to do a work in you that needs to happen in this moment. I found that that's been so helpful just in my relationship with God, and just being just vulnerable with Him and letting Him love on me in those moments. Being a father to me in those moments, because sometimes I just need, a swift, like, kick in the butt and be like, get it together, sister. Or sometimes I get, no, I'm so sorry that you're hurt right now. And so being vulnerable with God in those moments, I just think is always so important. And it's going to create a relationship with you and God that's so special, that's going to transcend this season into every other season that you're going to go in.
Yeah, that's so good. Made me kind of think too of, I think sometimes when you're waiting, it can be like a desolate place. Like, it can feel like you're walking in a desert, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like there's moments where you feel like you're gaining momentum. Yeah. And honestly, the past probably week and a half have just been like, okay, God, I feel like I'm gaining some momentum, and I'm scared. And I'm so excited, but I'm so nervous. And I have had to be like, okay, I'm going to take my hands off of this, and so it's like, okay, God, I'm being vulnerable with my emotions, and I'm proclaiming that I trust you in this moment. And it was not fun. Like, I did not want to be like, okay, God, like, if it's not from you, I don't want it. Yeah. Not one part of me wanted to say that. What is some things that, because I know we've kind of talked about this too, but guarding your heart when you're starting to gain momentum before you have that answer, because I think when you're going from not having what you're wishing for to starting to be like, okay, I see glimmers of hope, and then all of a sudden that little tiny glimmer of hope has become, you've painted your whole entire future. Right. Yeah. And then it doesn't always turn out that way. Yeah. You know, so what are some things that you feel like you tell yourself, or that you talk to God about, or that you do that kind of help you guard your heart in that?
Yeah. I was gonna say, number one, prayerfully enter into anything. Yeah. Like, I mean, lather that baby in prayer. Like, don't make one move without praying about it. Because, I mean, that's kind of been my experience, I think, lately too. Like, just like little glimmers, or possibilities. Yeah. It is so scary. And, like, I felt fear, where, like, fear gripped my heart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. I don't know if I want to, I don't know if I don't think I want what I've been waiting on, God. I changed my mind. Just kidding. But no, it's like, just so prayerfully move forward. Wise counsel is always important. Obviously, like, the people around you have a better viewpoint of you and what's going on sometimes than you can, being in, like, the middle of it. But also just, like, I think for me, like, being willing to accept whatever answer is also so important, because like, especially in a season of waiting, a season of singleness. Cute. Yay. In a season of singleness, like, when you do have, like, a possibility to move forward into a relationship or something like that, still trusting God and being like, okay, God, like I see that this is a possibility, but I'm also going to be open to whatever answer. And if it's a no, I'm still going to praise you. If it's a wait, I'm still going to praise you. And if it's a yes, I will definitely praise you. And just being willing to, just accept any answer moving forward, but prayerfully moving forward, number one.
So good. And I think that's something that you really do so well, and it's so encouraging. And you know, you've told me, like, there are times that you cry, and there's times that you're angry, and there's times, you know, you're on that mountaintop, and you're like, okay, I feel good. And so, you know, you've been open and honest, but you have just trusted God through it so much. And it's encouraged me to just watch your life of, even when things did not turn out like you had planned, or they didn't take you out of that season, that you've still just been so courageous in the face of it, and you haven't, like, lost hope for the future, because you know, eventually you just want to be like, okay, well, this is my identity. This is what I am forever. Yeah. And you have not adopted that. And that has just been really beautiful to see. So.
Well, thank you. Some days I do feel like I'm like, God, you've forgotten me and you forgot to make mine. Like, sometimes it does feel like that. And I do have those feelings. And sometimes it does feel really hopeless. And but God is who he says he is, and like, and he's so trustworthy. And on the days that I feel like that, I have to like pick myself up by my bootstraps, and I have to go and I go tell God, I'm like, God, today I feel like you failed me. That's how I feel today. I feel like you've just failed me, and I'm tired. I was talking to a friend a couple Sundays ago, and I was crying because it was just a hard day. And I just looked at her and I said, I'm so tired. I'm just tired. I'm tired of waiting. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't. But here I am, still waiting, and that's okay. You do have those moments, but like not letting it define this season. I think I've worked really hard with God, partnered with God to make sure that this season of my life is not defined by the bad or the hard.
Yeah. I think it's something too we talked about at lunch a few weeks ago, is just, you know, I was just like, hey, I have this great idea. I'm going to move to Nashville, and it's going to just be this whole new community. It's going to be so great. And you're like, okay, well, I've been there. And, you know, I think we have to also be so careful to not let how we want our lives to look to dictate our decisions, you know? And I found myself in that brief period of like, okay, I'm going to make all these decisions. Face value, that's not why I was making the decision. But then when I looked really deep in my heart, and you're like, well, you know, just give it some time. And I was like, oh, no, that's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because it's like, I'm not going to be present where I'm at. I'm going to put myself in that situation to find solely based off of that emotion. So
I was at a Bible study a couple weeks ago, and my friend was talking about a podcast she was listening to, and this guy was like, you know, it's really helpful to take the picture of like what you thought your life was going to look like, take it off the wall, grieve it, because you had a picture of what your life was going to look like. When I was 16, if you would have told me that I was going to be 26, married and no kids, I would have laughed in your face. I would have thought that was the funniest thing I've ever heard. Like, I mean, I was going to got my MRS degree in college, had a baby by 24. I mean, like, and God has changed my desires even in that so much as I've gotten older. I'm thankful that didn't happen. Even now, like, I have to take the picture of what I thought my life was going to look like. It's not bad. What I thought my life was going to look like is not bad. It's not evil, but I'm going to grieve it. I'm going to give it to God, and I'm going to accept what the story that he's writing for me. I think that's an important step of just being like, no, it's okay that my life is not looking like what I thought it was going to, but I also know that God only gives me his best. And I refuse to settle for anything but God's best for me. And that really is the place where I am right now, where I'm like, no, I only want your best for me, God. And I will not settle for anything but your best.
Yeah, that's so good. And again, I mean, it's not easy, you know.
No.
And I also, you know, I think there's times we don't want to grieve it. You know, we don't want to feel it, but just to be able to be like, okay, this isn't bad. It's so good, because I think so often we just try to ignore it and just be like, okay, well, that's just not what it was. And so I think another huge part of all of it is just to, and you've done this very well again, and I did not do it. Like, I'm kind of in the season where it's like, okay, this is where I'm planted right now. And this is where I'm going to soak the most that I can out of this and just see where it takes me, because right now this is where God has me, and there's purpose in that, because nothing he does is without point. You know,
Yeah.
it all has a purpose. And so I was like, okay, let's do what I can here. And, you know, you started doing the middle school at church.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you are roots deep where you're at, because this is where God has planted you right now. And I think that is also just so important for everyone listening who's in that waiting season, is just to plant yourself.
Yeah.
And you will be doing nothing but hurting yourself if you are trying to keep yourself secluded just because it's not where you think that your life should be, because right now this is where God has you. So
yeah, I think a huge trap of the enemy is a lie that, you know, especially for me, that I've had to fight is, well, your life doesn't start until you're married, or your life, or for some people, your life doesn't start until you have kids. Your life doesn't start until you get that dream job that you're waiting for.
Right.
Your life doesn't start until you get to do A, B, C, D, whatever it is. And that's such a trap of the enemy, because if I would have fallen into that, like, I don't even think I'd be sitting here.
yeah.
Like, I really don't. And yeah, I've just refused to let this season of my life be like just, isolation or no movement. Like, I don't want it to be a standstill. I'm not waiting. Like, I am waiting, but I'm not waiting. Like, I'm moving forward. I can just know that God's blessing that. And I can feel that. And so, I think, you know, a year ago me, or a year and a half ago me, was like, nope, I can't move until I'm married. And now I'm like, no, actually, there's so many things I can do in this season right now where maybe when I'm married, I can't do them anymore.
Right.
And I'm like I love the way that my life is looking right now, and I can't wait until I get the addition of what I'm waiting on, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be an addition, and not the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I went to one semester of college, hated it, but I did learn some things, and this has really kind of helped me out in my life and prepared me for seasons that I did not think I would ever, you know, walk in. But I had to read this paper, and to sum it all up, like, envision yourself as a kid, you know, and you are looking at the high schoolers, okay? You think that these people have their lives together.
Oh,
they are adults. They could, you know, they drive. They've got it all together. Now, fast forward and put yourself in that position of being a high schooler. It is nothing like you thought.
No.
But that's all you wanted to be when you were younger. And then you take yourself and you make yourself a parent. And you're like, oh, my parents have it together. You know, they are never upset. They never have problems. They you know, whatever. They know
all the right answers.
They have it all.
Yeah.
You get there, and it is, again, no way how you thought it was going to be. And so I think so often we put ourselves of like, okay, when I'm married, I'm going to have it all together. I'm going to have the house, the car, the kids, the husband. I'm going to have the perfect Instagram-worthy everything. Like, it's all going to be perfect, and everything that I want to accomplish is when I achieve the one thing that I want. That is just so far from the truth. I heard this person say, like, there is such a problem with, like, this singleness and waiting is a gift idea. Because it is. But that doesn't mean that you cannot have those emotions and you cannot have those hopes and dreams, and that you're just supposed to be like, it's a gift from God, like, whatever, next. You know, it's a process. And you have to look at it as a process of me just being recently in one, and then you being in it longer than me. We're at different parts of this process, but it's still a process. So that is so good. It's just to look at it all of, like, you know, you're put here in this season of your life with purpose to accomplish something. And, you know, I never want to wish it away, because you might not be able to make the impact you can now later, because right now you can help people who, just like me, who are walking in this season where it would be harder if you were married, you know, and it's like, well, now you can say that. And then it kind of makes that person sometimes I'm like, okay, I know, but, like, I don't want to hear that from you right now, because you have everything.
You're on the other side of it.
It's like, of course the grass is greener over there. It's like, you can look back and be like, hindsight's 20/20. Like, so I think that is so good. It's just to realize that, hey, just because the one thing I want hasn't happened yet doesn't mean my life's on hold.
God doesn't waste a season. God doesn't waste time. He doesn't waste a season. And I want to partner with him so that I don't sit around and let that happen.
Yeah.
Because, we have free will, and I could choose to mope. I really could. And some days I do, but that is not going to be the catalyst of this season of my life. Like, I pretty much refuse to do that. Yeah.
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 Well, that is just so good. And I'm so glad that you've been here. I mean, I feel like we could just, keep going, but I think the camera's about to die. So, but I am really so glad, and it's just been, you have just handled this season so well.
Thank
and
you.
It's so encouraging, and I know that you've impacted me and will impact many people, and it's been beautiful and encouraging just to watch you, and it's helped me push myself forward of like, hey, you know what, I'm young, and if I don't get married till I'm 30, that doesn't stop my life. It's not the end of my life, and so that has just been so good. So, is there anything you want to say to wrap it up?
I mean, the Bible says that God doesn't hold anything good He doesn't withhold anything good, and so He's a good Father, and He takes care of His kids. You just have to trust Him. Yeah.
So good. Well, we are so glad that you all got to watch and just come into our conversations for a little bit. I know that I get so much wisdom and enjoy talking to Makenzie so much. But our episodes drop every Thursday, so if you want to just stay tuned, and thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.